Hey folks, in this video example, we're going to dive into how to manage results in the interface builder. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the different areas where results are displayed. And so if you go into the interface builder under basic settings, there's a tab called results. And in there you will see these three groups: list, details, and map pop-up. I'm going to quickly cover what those are. The list is the list of results that runs along the left-hand side of the locator. That can be moved over to the right, and sometimes if there's no map displayed, that's all you see. But the list of results is, generally speaking, the list of results, right? The details pane, which is the next one, is a location-specific results display that's meant to display long-form copy and all the details you have about a specific location. And so as you can see in this template, it takes up the left-hand side of the screen and allows for a lot of space for things like a paragraph, photo gallery, bigger buttons, bigger calls to action, that sort of thing. And then the last one is the map pop-up. And this is what you see when you click on the map marker in some interfaces. It's relatively small and is really meant to reinforce the active selection. So if I'm looking at this location, as we can see here, we've got 111 East Kilbourne, and then I see that address and the location name reinforced. The map marker is has a little bit larger size, and so we're really trying to visually associate the item on the left with the item on the map. And so those are the three different results areas. And you'll notice as I hover over these, you'll get little visual cues as to what those things are, as indicated by the yellow highlight. That theme continues when we drill into one of these results areas. So if I hover my mouse over image, for example, I get that yellow highlight on the image telling me that that's the item that I'm currently concerned with, or the element that I'm currently about to edit. And so you'll see that in use throughout MetaLocator, where we highlight the element that you're about to edit. And so the first thing we'll talk about in this list is some simple items. The simplest, I think, is the ability to move these items up and down. So notice I can drag and drop the phone field. It was below the category list, and now I've dropped it above the category list. And so you can easily manipulate the display order of these things by simply dragging and dropping. The other really easy thing to do is to delete these items. And so, for example, I'm not a big fan of Street View, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. If I just click the little trash can icon, you'll notice that that will immediately remove that from the interface. We'll talk about how you can add that back into the interface if you accidentally remove something, or if you want to add new fields. You'll notice these blue headings throughout this list of settings. These are what are called MetaLocator containers. These are essentially areas inside this result card where you can place certain elements. This result card, if you're a developer, you might recognize it as a bootstrap card. And so the bootstrap card has different areas where certain things are really meant to be. So for example, this header image has a nice display. It has rounded corners, and that's because we've placed the image field in the image container. We have special treatment of the title because it's in the title container. As you add new fields, they will go by default into the body, which is this kind of generic area that can control, or that can hold any field that you need, and it doesn't apply any specific style or settings to it. The other one that's interesting is the links display. So that is meant to contain a series of calls to action that live at the bottom of the card. Not all templates take advantage of every region. One that's, I think, is kind of nice is the header region. So let's drag the address up into the header and just see how that works. So notice now the header establishes itself as like this little gray bar, and it only appears if there's content in it. And so that's an example of how a container can be used. Now that we have a basic understanding of how to move things around and delete them, I want to show you different ways that you can change how some of these things display. And so that's mostly done by the various settings available with each one of these options. And within each option, you'll see, for example, if we expand phone, you'll see some settings that are common to almost every result. And we're going to talk about some of those first. And then we'll talk about some that are unique to the setting that you might be working on. And so one that's common to pretty much every setting is the ability to label a particular result. So this is a phone. The label is a field that is essentially functions as a label for the data, and it is only output when there's a value. And so you have the ability to insert a heading or a string of text, and that is only displayed when that field has a value. So if this location didn't have a phone, that label would disappear. You'll find label for pretty much every field that we have. The other one that's available in pretty much every field is the tooltip. This is a nice little hover element that displays when the user positions their mouse over the result. So I will add a click to call tooltip over the phone. And when I hover over the phone, now we have an example of a tooltip. It'll say click to call. Tooltips are not displayed to mobile users because they can't really hover over the on mobile. So I wouldn't put any super critical information in there, but it's a really nice reinforcement for a particular call to action. The next one that I want to mention that's on pretty much every field is the icon. So you'll see these strings like FA phone. FA stands for font awesome. It's one of the most ubiquitous icon libraries that you'll find online. They have an icon for pretty much everything. You can click this box to browse some of the default icons, and it's a really tall list, and it's frankly a little bit hard to deal with. If I'm looking for a font awesome icon, I frankly typically Google the FA name, so something like FA -angle double right. You can look that code up just by Googling it, and you'll find a lot of different font awesome icons that might be appropriate for whatever you're trying to do. But of course, if you don't want an icon, you can just wipe that space out and make it empty, and the field will display without an icon. Some of these templates get a little icon heavy, so you can feel free to go through and remove that setting wherever you need to. The next one I want to talk about is the styles dropdown. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I want to mention it since we're going through the settings. The styles basically control the CSS classes that are attached to this particular field. And some of them apply very well to specific types of calls to action, for example, or specific types of fields. For example, if it's a link, making it a button style makes sense, right? But if it's just plain text, making it a button style doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So just make sure you're choosing a style that's appropriate for the type of thing that you're trying to do. The phone numbers in MetaLocator are clickable, and so making this a button kind of makes sense. So if I choose primary outline button from the style, notice the phone number just turned into a button. That's now a bold call to action. If I wanted to, for example, change it to like the warning class outline button, I could do that, and notice now that it's yellow. There's a whole bunch of styles in here that apply better or worse depending on the type of result you're displaying. For example, you wouldn't really want to put a drop shadow on text or try to put rounded borders on a phone number. So just make sure that it makes sense for your application. One of the ones that I use a lot actually sometimes is the hide class. If I want to, for example, have something just hidden in the UI, I can hide it using the hide class. And so feel free to explore this list. There's things like controlling font if you want to make something bolded or stronger, but there's a lot available in that drop-down list. The next one I want to cover is the template. For our pro and higher users, you will have the ability to edit these templates. We'll go into template editing in a completely separate video, but any user can choose the template that's used to render this particular field. So not all fields will have this, but notice we have the ability to control how this actually controls the HTML that is used to render this field. And sometimes you want to change that. So the template for phone outputs it as just a regular phone without a link. If I do phone linked, it outputs it as a phone with a hyperlink on it. If I output it as phone SMS, it presumes that this value is actually going to be some phone number that I can text, and so if somebody clicks that, it will invoke the SMS feature on their phone. There's a whole bunch of different variations depending on the type of field that you're looking at. So let's go up to full address, for example. I'm going to drag that back into the body section just to make it easier to see. Let's look at a few variations of how the address can be displayed. If I scroll down here, notice the default template is full address linked to directions. I can also just change that to full address if I don't want the directions link in there, or I can do full address multi-line, which puts it onto 2 lines, 111 East Kilbourne, and now we see Milwaukee, Wisconsin is listed there second. So what you'll find in this template dropdown are common variations of how a particular field should be displayed when it's used in a locator. And for our pro and higher users, you can actually modify the HTML. So we're not going to get into that in this video, but you can see that the HTML here can be directly edited, and you can even include handlebars, variables, and conditional logic and all sorts of stuff like that. So those are the settings that are commonly available to each one of these individual results. But feel free for every field that you add to expand the list and see what might be specific, a specific setting available to that particular field. The next thing I'd like to talk about is adding fields to the results. So by default, the template includes things like address, street view, categories, phone, and different calls to action. But sometimes you want to add a particular custom field, or maybe a field that is not included in the particular template. So to do that, first pick the results area that you want to add the field to. In this example, I'm going to add it to the list field, or excuse me, the list results area, and go ahead and click Add Field. The system will then display this option to choose any of the available fields in MetaLocator, and then also any custom fields that you may have brought in during the import, or fields that you may have created. So you'll see these grouped by special fields that include some things like horizontal lines or even a custom label. And then you also have system fields, which are things like name, address, and all the fields that MetaLocator comes with. And then finally, some custom fields that maybe you have included as part of your import. When I imported this data, I included a field called favorite color. I'm going to go ahead and add that as part of the results. Now we can see that the favorite color is displayed, and it was added to the body container by default. And so now I can expand this and I can make a few changes to it. If I wanted to, for example, I could add a label that said something like favorite color. I could add a tooltip, and I could change styles and otherwise customize how that will display in my results. I can also drag it if I want to move it out of, for example, the results, and move it down into the link bar. If I wanted to, I could move these things around as needed. The last field I want to talk about is a special field called text, and this is basically a generic label field. So if you add field and you choose text from the dropdown, this is a great kind of Swiss Army knife, if you will, for displaying just generic labels on the results that aren't necessarily connected to data. And so if you expand text, you can just output kind of whatever you want. So if you have a particular label you always want to display or something like that, you can include that. The other thing that's really nice about label is if you want to combine, for example, a custom field plus a system field in the output, and you want to use those together, the template can be customized, and this is for our pro and higher users only. But if I edit this template, I can specify other fields in here. So for example, if I wanted to include favorite color, I could just type that in, and I actually think I spelled it wrong when I first added it. So I could add in favorite color, but then I could also add in other fields like address and city. And I could even include conditional logic for things like, I could use things for like, if the city is provided, then output the favorite color that kind of stuff. And so we'll get into the details of item templates in a different video, but I wanted to point out that text is a great way to just have a free-form template that you can include in any result. The next piece I want to cover is, we'll cover pretty quick, but I want to show that the same changes are available same features are available in both the details pane and the map pop-up, and I want to show you how to use those. So I collapsed the list field that we've been working in so far, and now I'm working in the details. And I can make a change here, and the system will automatically pop up the details view, or I can just click the Show Details button. It'll refresh the UI and give me the details that I'm working with. So again, you can come in here and you can do things like remove the description field, or make any other changes that you need to. In this example, our template is leveraging the toolbar container. Cool thing about the toolbar container is that any button that's added to this gets this kind of Google Maps style treatment, and so you can make whatever changes you need to in the details view. Same thing for the map pop-up. It's the same controls, and you have the ability to show the map pop-up by clicking that guy, or if you make any changes, the system will automatically open the map pop-up. One thing I'll say about the map pop-up is you don't want that to get too big. The end users, especially on mobile, are going to be dealing with the result card and maybe the details screen. And again, the values in the map pop-up are really used to visually reinforce the marker icon with the active result on the left, or however you're displaying the list. And so that's a good summary of how to manipulate results in the interface builder. Thanks.